Facebook, this is your girl Regina Lynette Brown, RLB Consulting Service, coming to you today to encourage you as I encourage myself. Know that every time I come to you, I am working on me, and I am sharing what I'm working on me with you so you can work on you too, so we can all come up together, right? So we can all get there together, we can celebrate together, and God can get the glory out of whatever it is that He's doing in each and every one of our lives, because this thing called life is about relationship. It is about building relationship and all of that. So I want to wait just a couple more minutes just to let everybody get online that's coming online today. But I want to thank you guys for coming on and joining me last week when we talked about Christian student success strategies. And again, I was speaking to the student of life, and I was speaking to the student that's actually in the classroom, because as many of you know, I'm an accounting professor and at the community college here in Dallas County Community College District, soon to be known as Dallas College. And many of the students have different challenges, especially with this new pandemic and the modality that we have to do to flip everything online. It's just a lot of challenges. And then with the students not being able, they're supposed to celebrate their commencement in just a few weeks, they're not able to do that. So I felt compelled to kind of encourage them and give them some seeds to grow, kind of like some commencement speech type stuff, right? So that I can help water their seeds so that they can grow and be strong. And I happen to believe that this generation that's going through this transition with us is going to be the strongest ever. I think they're going to be the most creative. I think they're going to be the most successful. I think they're going to be the loudest voice. I think they're going to have change just reform itself, right? And conquer the fear of any and everything that they are faced. I just don't think that they will have that problem. So with that said, today we're going to talk about discipline and decision making. And I've come up with 5 essential processes to achieve your goals. And just like last week, I'm live with you in person on my page, and I'm also live on my business page. So if you want to see the PowerPoint notes, you're welcome to go to my business page or stay here with me and we could just have this conversation. So with that, I want to go back and review from last week, because we talked about the Christian student success strategies. And I wanted to review that because that was your homework, right? Your homework was to go back and apply the strategies to whatever situation you're dealing with, whether you're the student of life and we're having to recreate ourselves like we have to every day, right? Because you're never not a student, because you should always be learning and growing. We should be learning and growing from our mistakes. We should be learning and growing just to better ourselves. So we were to go back and take these 8 keys to unlock endless possibilities and unlock some new possibilities in our life, right? So we were supposed to go back and self-identify, knowing who we are and who we are in Christ, and really just kind of getting self-discovery down, because there's some things that we have learned about ourselves now during this time that we had to sit still, right? That is going to change us forever. There's some of us who had a really hard time sitting still and who actually learned to embrace, hey, Misty, and actually learned to embrace the concept of sitting still, right? And then the wonder, hey, Ruffing, the wonder of God in sitting and how He just recreated you. He gave you new thought. He gave you new processes. He gave you new relationships. He just renewed us all the way around and is still doing so, right? So we identified. Self-identity was last week, the first key. And then the second one was action. We were supposed to take some action. So when God pours into your mind, into your spirit, a thing that He wants you to do, if you're like me and don't get up and write it down, hey, Ernestine, and don't get up and do anything with it, you forget, right? Especially kind of like at this point, like when you walk in one room and you forget why you came in that room, and then you kind of pause for a minute and it kind of come back to you. So it's the same kind of thing when we're sitting still now. we need to make sure that we're taking note and taking an action on what it is that God has planted as we do our self-discovery. Then goal setting. I'm looking around at my PowerPoint. So goal setting is my pointers. Goal setting was the other thing that we talked about. And remember, I host all the workshops every year in January. Prayerfully, we'll be able to hold a workshop. If not, we'll do it electronically, right? We're going to recreate some things and do some things a new way. I'm actually going to plan a mid-year in June, some kind of electronic, what have you, to go back over what we were talking about in Level Up. You know, planning your vision and writing it down and making it visible so that you can see it every day and discover what is new for you in your life. Then the prioritizing, we talked about having to set those priorities so that we can actually accomplish them. Because if we don't set ourselves a schedule, right, we tend to not, we just kind of do whatever. Everything pulls us one way or another. If I sit and wake up and the first thing I do is look at email will have me attached to it all day long because it doesn't stop. It's like your inbox. It just doesn't stop. But if you prioritize and say, you know what, I'm only going to read email from this time to this time, and then from this time to this time, I'm going to work on whatever the tasks are of the day, and then I'm going to go back and check email later. If you don't give yourself those boundaries and prioritize, then we kind of get lost in things. And then thinking through, you know, processing this time of sitting still allows us to be able to think clearly without distraction, right? This is like perfect meditation time, you know, to just sit outside and just be, because outside is not as busy as it was. It's not as noisy. It's like I'm living downtown now and I actually can hear nature, right? But I couldn't always hear nature unless I got up real early. But I can hear nature most of the day now because it's not as busy. So we have to use this time to think and reflect on what God wants for our lives. The next note or thought is knowledge from last week, and that's key number 6. And we have to study to show ourselves approved. And that's not just the Bible, but the Bible applies to almost everything that I have experienced in my life. I can find it that somebody else in the Bible already experienced it. So that's first, right? Because we're to prioritize God first. But whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, you can't accomplish it without the knowledge behind it. So you're still going to have to study and find ways to grow. Alliance, that's building your network around you of different people who you can reach out to. Hey, Stephanie, and connect with to help you. Hey, Lewis, get to that next level in life. So it's about networking and who it is. And remember, I told you, the older and wiser you get, the smaller that circle is. So you can have a whole lot of connections, a whole lot of alliances, but your circle of truth is that small group that is your support system, and they will be there no matter what. Hey, Harrison. And then the last key from last week was renewal. We want to constantly renew ourselves and our faith so that we are constantly growing and not getting static. You know, static versus flexible. These are some accounting terms that we use for budgeting. Static doesn't allow any flexibility. It just is what it is. If I either have enough or I don't have enough, or I made it or I didn't make it. Flexibility allows us to do what we're doing right now. So we were so flexible that we flipped our classes on the internet, right? And I'm still able to face-to-face connect with my students and still give them a value-added lecture education in this new setting. So I was able to renew what I was doing, right? So we always have to be able to sharpen the saw and position ourselves that way. So today's topic again is decision versus discipline. And I've come up with 5 essential processes to help us to take what we learned last week, the 8 keys to unlock endless possibilities from the success strategies, to this. So a decision, first I start out with definition. So according to dictionary.com, a decision is a conclusion or a resolution reached after consideration. A decision or a resolution reached after consideration, meaning that we took some time, as we just talked about, to think about it, right? Gain some information to make a decision. We processed it. We took time. We meditated on it. Then it goes on to say from Psychology Today, which I think I spelled wrong on my PowerPoint, A good decision is one that is made deliberately and thoughtfully, considers and includes all relevant factors, is consistent with the individual's philosophy and value, and can be explained clearly to significant others. So, in other words, in order to make a good decision, you got to think about it. In order to think about it, you have to have information. In order to have information, you got to read. You got to gain some knowledge. So it all kind of builds back with those success strategies in the classroom of life, or even in the actual classroom. If you want to make a good decision about what it is that you need to do, you have to equip yourself. And then the third thing was just simply making up our mind to choose, because crossroads, right? There's always going to be a crossroad. Have you ever been traveling and not really have ever been that way before, and you get to this crossroad like, okay, am I supposed to go to the left or the right? And the GPS is tripping because you know how it's, rerouting, and it won't tell you what to do, and you got to make a decision. So that's such as life, right? We're always going to be at a point in our life where we have to make some decisions. And sometimes, hey, Eric, it just comes down to, a matter of thinking through the process and making the best choice from the research you've done. It also includes maybe reaching out to that alliance, that group of network people that you have connected with, to get some information to further help you make the better decision among your choices. So it's all about what we do with the tools that we've already talked about. Now, discipline, on the other hand, we all know, and I didn't include this one on here, spare the rod, spoil the child, because if y'all mama was like my mama and y'all daddy was like my daddy, we got whoopings, right? You messed up, you got toe up where you messed up. If you messed up at church, you got toe up at church. You messed up in the store, you got toe up in the store. And back then we didn't really understand that. We weren't feeling it. We was like, okay, they tripping, they all whatever, they in their feelings, and they always tripping, And now, when you reflect back, and even when you're dealing with young people yourselves, you are reflecting on when, boy, if I was you, I would have got my butt toe up for saying that or doing this or whatever the case may have been. And, I'm too old for whoopings, I'm too whatever. I'm like, okay, but back in our day, there was no such thing as too old, because you would still get backslapped, right, grown, for saying the wrong things. There's days now that I'm real careful about what I say to mama, because mama liable to have a flashback. So discipline is supposed to correct incorrect behavior, okay? So according to dictionary.com, it says a practice of teaching others to obey rules or norms by using punishment to correct behavior. It goes on to say, it helps to train a person's mind, and this is from elitedaily.com, helps to train a person's mind and character, building a sense of self-control and the practice of obedience. Self-discipline, which is a component of discipline, right? Because we can only really discipline ourselves. Self-discipline is a form of freedom. Freedom from laziness and lethargy. That's a new word for me. I've been practicing it, lethargy. And lethargy is a lack of energy or enthusiasm. So I don't know about y'all, and I'm going to finish this statement in a minute, but there are days when you just want, like we talked about last week, I don't always feel like waking up to exercise, and I know you don't either. Hey, Annie. But I want to hold on to my pillow a little bit longer. I want to, just lay there. I want to be lazy. I don't want to do something, because people that don't work as hard as you do, because sometimes a lot of us grind really, really hard because that's what we know. We know the hustle, especially those of us from city areas, right? Well, I can't even say that, because people in the country, baby, they got a whole different grind, right? It's just different. So if you're from a family that knows how to grind, you get up early in the morning, they grinding, and before it even evening time or dinner time, they still grinding up till they get to the table, then that's what's instilled in you, right? You don't know nothing but the grind. But at the same time, when you kind of look around and see what other people are doing, it kind of makes you want to have a lazy day. And at the same time, hey, Robert, it also kind of makes you want to have an excuse, right? to be lazy. Like, well, you know, I worked hard all week. I did this, I did all that. And so we do become lazy and have no energy or enthusiasm to do something, but that's not self-discipline, right? So let me finish reading this. So it says, freedom from the expectation and demands of others, freedom from weakness and fear and doubt. When we do that, we do become weak. We're subjecting ourselves, hey, Vanessa, to whatever that feeling is. And we should know by now, feelings will fail you every time. Feelings are not how you get something done. Feelings are like, you know, they're like the icing on the cake, but you can eat cake without icing, right? The cake is what you need to put the icing on, but you don't have to have the icing to have the cake. So that's what feelings are. You know, you can have a relationship without having your feelings involved in it at the same time, but you still have feelings, if that makes any sense to y'all. So when we're dealing with discipline and self-control, we can't allow our feelings to consume us, because, you know, those people that are consumed, we'll just say with love, right? You meet somebody, oh my God, they're just the booger with the sugar. You just consume with it. You're not thinking clear. You're not making good decisions. You're not disciplining yourself. You have no self-control. You just done lost it, right? And people be like, oh girl, you tripping. You just all head over heels, huh? You know, and later the person reflects and they feel like, oh man, you know what? I wasn't even thinking clearly. I did this, I did that. So you have to have a balance and boundaries between the two. You can't be so engulfed in your feelings, because then we don't, oh goodness, okay, it was trying to go off. We don't make good decisions when we're in our feelings, when we live there. Again, the slides are on my business page if you want to see those. The next part that I have for defining discipline was that it promotes focus and initiative. When we have focus and initiative, you have a goal, right? So I want to conquer my day. So I'm starting to make sure I get up at a certain time every day. And I'm trying to inch that time back earlier and earlier by disciplining myself to go to bed. Because I happen to be a night owl. You know, when things get quiet, I can focus and I get zoned in or whatever I'm working on. And before I know it, it's midnight, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. So I'm cutting back on that so that I can rise up earlier, because what I also found is that I feel better and I have more energy and I have fresh thought when I'm up earlier in the morning. So it's some things that we have to do to refocus and to have the initiative. It teaches us to overcome our challenges and to achieve our goals. This is discipline that we're talking about. And it focuses on taking actions beyond our feelings. So we don't always feel like doing what we need to do, but we got to get it done. And so I tell the students all the time, I know you don't feel like studying, but studying is what's going to help you pass. Passing is going to help you graduate. Graduating is going to help you get the job that you want to get, and then therefore get into the car that you want, the house that you want, and all these other things, because you know they focus on the things. So in order to get to the things, you got to go through the process. And so this is what discipline allows us to do. So that's why I wanted to talk about this today. So the next point, and I'm still doing this comparison on each of the slides. So the next one is about God's word on decision. So a couple of scriptures on this. So on decision, you may make your plans, but God directs your actions. Proverbs 16:9. James 1:5 says, but if any of you lack wisdom, you should pray to God. So, and the internet is tripping and the devil is a lie. So I'm still going to be live whichever way. So if we drop off on my page, y'all need to come to my business page and follow me. But anywho, basically what this is telling me is that in order for me to make a decision, I need to pray about it. In order for me to pray about it, I got to be open to the knowledge and wisdom of God and his leading, because he's going to give it to me, but I got to discipline myself enough to seek him to get the information. On discipline, God's word, whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, but he who hates correction is stupid. It just broke it down real plain. It ain't even, get no whole extra big words. It just say, you stupid. You stupid, you don't want to learn? Okay, something wrong with you. And that's in Proverbs 12:1. Goes on to say, folly is bound up in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline would drive it far from him. Proverbs 22:15. So that's kind of what our parents was trying to do, right? Our parents was trying to drive, hey Eunice, our parents were trying to drive the the negativity out of us. You know, if we were smart mouth, they were trying to drive the smart mouth out. If we were, I don't know, whatever we were doing as a child that they felt was not the correct behavior, they tried to correct it one way or another. And most of our parents did it, you know, via spanking. Some of them did it with the punishment, right? Or you can't go outside, you can't have your allowance, you can't hang out with your friends. And you wanted to do those things, right? So this is what we did. For me, for my students, what I do, I flip it. I use a little bit of reverse psychology. I don't tell them, you know, oh, you know what? That's sad. You ain't been to class. You know, what I say is, when you come to class, this is what your reward is for coming to class. So for coming to class, you have the opportunity at the end of the class for some extra credit. Because we all know they want some extra credit because we already know they're going to fall off the wagon somewhere in between the semester, the time beginning to end. They're going to fall off and they're going to need just a little bit of help to pass. So there's always this carrot that I dangle in front of them. Well, if you're doing what you're supposed to do and you're coming to class, you have this opportunity. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, then the opportunity is not there. So I kind of still discipline them, but I use it with a little bit of reverse psychology. Instead of beating them up about the poor behavior, I make them think about why this other way is a better way. And that's pretty much what your parents did. You know, they just didn't always have a good way of explaining themselves because they didn't feel that they had to. It was do as I say, not as I do, right? So when we look at the word and it talks about whoever loves discipline loves knowledge, you know, we don't always want to be corrected. I mean, we don't want negative feedback, right? When I give negative feedback to my staff that teaches part-time, you know, they don't always want to hear that because, you know, they hustling trying to do both. But at the same time, some of them appreciate it because they don't have full-time experience and they don't have 20 years of experience. So when I'm giving them the feedback, I'm trying to better them so that they can better connect with their students so that they have better outcomes. And some of them realize that. But if your mind is clouded and you have blinders on, when people are giving you feedback and trying to give you guidance, you don't hear it, you reject it, right? And it's not until it comes back again. Because I remember last week we talked about that it's kind of like a karma thing. Whatever life lesson you don't learn, it kind of comes back around and you have to learn it that next time. And if you don't get it, you come back around. And it's just a repetitive cycle until we actually get it. And when it comes back around, you should recognize it at that point. And that's what really this is talking about. So I have five essential processes. So the first one is knowledge. So knowledge, under decision, I have the scripture that says, he who answers before listening, that is his folly and his shame. So the first thing we need to do when we're making a decision is listen. If you listen intensely to what's being said in the conversation, discussions, and everything, hey, Arthur, that's going on, you might get a better understanding to think through the process to have a better response. But if you're not listening, you can't make an informed decision because you didn't hear everything all the way out. So that's one of the first keys here from Proverbs 18 and 13. Again, if you need to see the slides, they're on my page. Then it goes on to say in Proverbs 18:17, the first to present his case sees right until another comes forward and questions him. So what we do when we present ourselves, you know, for example, okay, I'll put it this way. You read one source, right? And you're like, oh, okay, I get this. And then you go back and you read 2 or 3 other sources that had different opinions. And that first one seemed like it was straight on point, but then you got these other 2 things that you've read and you're like, oh, it's kind of like when you're telling people something, you want somebody's opinion. So you tell 3 or 4 people and you get varying views about the same topic. It goes back to the sowing of the seeds. When the farmer in the Bible was sowing the seeds, it fell on rocky ground, it fell on fertile ground, it fell in the weeds, right? So you had 3 different products from the same lesson, from the same teaching. It was responded to 3 different ways. So it confuses a person. It's like, well, am I supposed to do A? Am I supposed to do B? Am I supposed to do C? So what I advise us to do is to seek wise counsel, right? Because when you seek wise counsel is somebody who's been there, done that, and have a t-shirt for it, right? And they can tell you, they say, well, from my experience, this has been. And that's who you listen to, because they're giving you truth and value added. If you can go back and validate what they say or what they share with you, or validate anything else that you're reading and coming across, those sources, that's what makes the decision sound, the information sound, that you can go forward with a good decision. Then the next one of the decision is Colossians 1:9. For this reason, also we heard of it. We have not ceased to pray for you and to ask that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding. So again, here we hear the word pray. If we want some knowledge, we need to do what? We need to pray. We got to seek him. And then the thing about praying is, prayer, is just a conversation with the Lord, the Holy Spirit interceding. If you're quiet and you're still and you've been reading his word and meditating on it, he's going to drop in your spirit a person, a thing, a scripture, whatever it is to answer you, to give you clarity on how to seek this answer. Hey, Miss Allegra. And when he does that, he's dropping knowledge on you, right? So that's again going back to earlier when I said, when God gives you something, you got to go ahead and write it down when you get up, because, you'll forget it. You have to do that thing right then. You got to take the action right when he gives it to you. That hasn't happened to you. You haven't sat still long enough. So make sure that before you make your decisions, you're seeking him first. That's through prayer. He's going to tell you who to share your business with. Because remember last week I told you can't share your business with everybody, right? Because everybody got an opinion. It ain't always in your best interest. And then you got to seek wise counsel, which is on another slide. So discipline under knowledge. The plans of the diligent lead to profit as surely as haste leads to poverty. Proverbs 21:5. When we rush into doing stuff, we actually waste money and time and effort. When we rush into it without making a good decision, we were not practicing self-discipline. We were not practicing self-control. We just rushed into it. And so therefore, we're looking foolish again because we've not profited from it, right? So, and remember again, I told y'all when I started, when I'm talking to y'all, I'm talking to myself. And I'm encouraging you, I'm encouraging myself. The experiences I've experienced, I'm sharing with you so that we can all grow together and get on that next level together. So that's what this is all about. Proverbs 4:1-2 says, listen, my sons, to a father's instructions. Pay attention and gain understanding. I give you sound learning, so do not forsake my teaching. Hey, Miss Ivy. And so when we listen to this, like our parents, as I told y'all before, Grandma always used to tell me, because I used to ask 1,000,001 questions, baby, you'll understand by and by. Well, I didn't know what by and by meant, right? And until I got in the 40s and the 50s, then by and by start being a thing, right? We have to listen to them. When you're talking to somebody, a child, a younger person, you get in your feelings, you roll your eyes, you're kind of not feeling them because you're feeling chastised and you're feeling like, they're beating you up for having taken a step. Let's say you took a step in the wrong direction and then somebody sits you down and tries to school you on it, right? Because that's what a life lesson is. They school you on it. Hey, Tish. And so when you're being schooled on it, you kind of get in your feelings. And when you get in your feelings, you're really not paying attention to the lesson that the person is trying to share with you. This is wisdom that they're trying to impart on you. And if you actually do pay attention and get the wisdom that they're trying to impart on you, then you become more self-disciplined. Because you have to discipline yourself to hear and then take action on what you heard. But I tell my students when they come in class and they're in their feelings about whatever happened at home, and their feelings about whatever happened with their boo before they got to class, and their feelings about life, and their feelings because I offended them, because I called them out for being late or whatever. When you are in your feelings, you do not hear anything said after whatever was said that offended you. You don't hear nothing else. You still stuck on, oh, I know she didn't. I know he didn't. I need to give him a piece of my mind. And in your head, you sitting up here formulating whatever it was you're going to say. unless you already flipped off foolishly and said it without thinking or practicing self-control. So we have to learn how to listen and pay attention. It's a process, but life is trial and error. So don't beat yourself up when we don't do this. This is all a part of the process, right? We don't get to be self-disciplined without making mistakes, because success comes from making those mistakes. We didn't always listen to our parents. We didn't always listen to our teachers. But then once life kicked in and you realize it, you're like, oh. So that's when it kind of comes in. So be lenient to that extent with your children and with your students, because they're not there yet. But keep talking to them. Don't get discouraged with them. Don't get frustrated at them when they go the wrong way and they say the wrong thing. Keep working on them, because eventually they will. They'll get it, right? Because we have to give them the instruction. If we don't give the instruction, that's when they fall off and they listen to other people who are not necessarily giving them wise instruction. Proverbs 4:7 says, wisdom is supreme, therefore get wisdom. Though it cost you, and I have another typo, though it cost you all you have, get understanding. Now, it's going to cost us some time and some effort to get some understanding. Why? Because we got to spend time studying whatever the subject is. We have to spend time doing some research to deepen the study, right? We have to spend time talking to people to get knowledge from them about the study. And then we got to spend time marinating on it to see what is in it for us. It costs you, right? Sometimes the mistake of not listening costs you too, thanks cuz. Sometimes the mistake costs you more. It costs you money, some other unfortunate life happening, it just costs you. And so some life lessons you learn vicariously through others, and some life lessons we have to learn on our own. We have to touch the stove to know the stove is hot, and have a burn mark to say, girl, I didn't believe mama back in the day, and she said it was hot and it was hot, So some of us learn differently, and it's okay. So be forgiving with yourself and be compassionate with others as they are learning too, because we didn't all get it the first time. So that's knowledge. The next one is guidance. So we're on the second of the 5 essentials. Guidance under decision is, your word is a lamp to my feet and a light for my path. Psalms 119:105. Joshua 1:8 says, do not let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Meditate on it day and night so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. And then Psalms 1:1-2 says, blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in ways of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. So for your decisions, again, we're going back to praying. When we go back to praying, that also means that, again, we need to meditate on it. But also when you're making your decisions, you have to be, as I said earlier, about being careful who you share with, but being careful who you follow. Because sometimes we see people in position and we admire them, right? For whatever it is that we see about them or know about them or whatever they've accomplished. But we don't necessarily know how they got there. So we have to be careful of that and following in their path, or even listening to their wisdom without really fully having all the information that we need. So that's when you got to listen more intensely. That's when you have to research more intensely. You have to ask more questions so that you gain the knowledge and not just be caught up in what you see. Again, like being caught up in your feelings. On the discipline side, for guidance, for God did not give us the spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of self-discipline. 2 Timothy 1:7. Get wisdom, get understanding. Do not forget my words or swerve from them. Proverbs 4:5. Listen to advice and accept instruction that you may gain wisdom in the future. Many are the plans in the mind of a man, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will stand. So the discipline comes in, sometimes there's a fear factor, right? we do things out of fear that if we don't do this, then we won't get this, right? I believe that God qualifies those he calls to do a certain thing. And if he qualifies us to do a certain thing, he's going to equip you. So when we allow fear to make us make a decision too quickly and we act out on that decision without a sound path or sound information, the discipline behind that is learning from it, right? Learning that what's for you, what worked for you may not be what works for me. So figuring out what works for you by self-discovery. Getting the wisdom. I sit around a whole bunch of folks 60 and over, and I listen to them. I call them. We have intense conversations. We talk about every inch of life, right? So that I can be informed, so that I can make better decisions about not just whatever is on my mind at that time, but everything. And then what's really funny is when you're reflecting, you go back and you actually remember something that somebody dropped in your spirit moons ago, and it actually helps you to self-control, to self-discipline, and make an informed decision. Because you didn't need it at that time, you needed it now. And then when we go forth, like it says in Proverbs 19, 20, and 21, God's purpose will stand if we're seeking him and it's his purpose. So whatever the correction is and the discipline, whatever we're not learning, he's not going to allow you to fail at it. He's going to allow you to learn from the failure and come back at it. Sort of like Jonah. Jonah was sent on a mission by God to do what he told him to do, and he didn't do what he told him to do. He went and did what he wanted to do because he didn't want to do what God told him to do. Well, God allowed him to go because God, being God, could have stopped him from even getting on the ship and going in another direction. He could have just not allowed that to happen. The ship could have already been sailed, right, by the time he got there. But God, being who he is and not forcing himself on us and allowing us to make our own decisions and to learn from our own lessons, meaning self-discipline. He allows us to be disciplined. He allowed him to go. And then he allowed him to be swallowed by the belly of the whale, into the belly of the whale. He allowed him to have to repent and then to start again and gave him another chance. So we are just like that. We have to learn from whatever it is that we're going through that we're not going to get it all right, and that it's okay to forgive yourself and to forgive others and just to give grace because God gives us grace. That's what discipline is all about. Discipline from God is just correcting us to move us closer to whatever the purpose is that he has for us. In the classroom, when we mark their papers wrong, we're not, saying that they don't have a clue. What we're saying is you had a clue up until this point. This is the point we need you to fix. If you fix this, then the rest of it kind of works out. The only thing I have never agreed with in the classroom was that red pen, right? I hated the red pen. The red pen made me feel so small. I don't know about y'all, but I felt really small whenever I had red pen all over my paper or just anywhere on my paper. I didn't want no red pen. So when I started teaching, when I grade papers or write on papers, I use green because I felt green was more encouraging and empowering. I'm circling it and they're not feeling any kind of way about it. They look at it and they're more intense into what I circled versus, yes, no red pen. What I circled, they're not in their feelings about it. They're sitting there and they're actually trying to figure out what went wrong because I didn't flag them, right? You don't want your friends looking at your paper when you get your paper back and you got a bunch of red marks on there. Such is life. When we had spankings as a kid and your mama told you to go get the switch, you were like, dang, I didn't want her to get no switch because the switch is going to leave some red marks, especially on me, right? But when they got a belt, you good with a belt because belt didn't really leave no red marks because you got a spanking with a belt on your butt. You got a switch, you got switch marks everywhere. So it's a difference in how you're disciplined. So learn to take the lessons of life and build on them and not be discouraged from them. And let's see, what did Tish say? Good insights. Thank you, sis. And then humility is the next one. And so humility under decision, the way of a fool seems right to him, but a wise man listens to advice. We already talked about a fool, right? A fool is the one that start talking before you finish your sentence. your boss could be telling you they're about to promote you, but they start talking about the things that they want you to work on first, right? Because sometimes some people start on what what you need to correct in order to build you up. But you start defending yourself and saying something off the fly before they even finish talking. So, hey, Miss Victoria, so you have already blocked being foolish. You've already blocked whatever they were getting ready to do. Well, I was about to promote you, but since you said what you said, so you kind of foolishly block out whatever is for you by jumping out there too soon. So you have to learn to listen. And again, so we've been talking about listening. He who walks with the wise grows wise, but the companion of fools suffer. It's all about that alliance. So we talked about the alliance in last week. Your network, who you hang with, it does matter. It does matter who you hang with. And you have to choose it. It does matter who you share your business with, which is why you don't share it with everybody, right? Because you share it with the foolish, all they're going to do is tell somebody else. And they're not going to tell them exactly what you told them, right? They're going to tell them some mess, and it's going to twist it, and it's not even going to come out the same way. But when you hang with the wise, they're going to redirect you, they're going to give you guidance, and they're going to help you to move forward with whatever that is. So you got to focus on who you hanging with, right? Hey, Dorian. And then the other thing under decision is plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. So like I said earlier, my deep conversations are with people 60 and older. Now, I would tell you from my mom being the youngest sister living, and all her older sisters, they're all in their 90s. So mom will be 90 in a few weeks. But all of her sisters in their 90s. So all my cousins are older. I'm the youngest cousin. So we're talking 60 and older. So when I need sound advice, I go to them. Because not only do they love me, right? But they are looking out for the best for me. And they're going to give me their experience, their advice from their experience, which I already know is based on, biblical principles, because we were all raised that way. And so I'm not necessarily going to go out and foolishly blow Joe and just say, I was walking down the street and this person told me blah, 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 blah. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to change my whole life. I'm going to do this. And not to say that God can't use a stranger to give you some advice, but it's not the same. It's not walking with the wise and growing with the wise. Two different things. So we have to have time for prayer and meditation to discern the information that you've gotten. Then Proverbs 15:22, the plans fail for lack of counsel. Oh, we read that one, for many advisors. So the other thing I was going to say, I have an advisor for all walks of my life. I have somebody that I talk to. Thank you. I have somebody that I talk to about spiritual things. I have somebody I talk to about work things. I have somebody I talk to about, just life things in general. So you have to have multiple people that and go to just to get, even if it's just a vent, to have a safe haven for that platform to vent, because we all have things going on, and if you don't have a place to get it out, you can't make a good decision about whatever it is that you're dealing with. Discipline. Our fathers disciplined us for a little while as they thought best, but God disciplines us for our good, that we may share in his holiness. So God is doing it because he created us for a purpose, which we talked about last week. And he created us for a purpose because he's the ultimate manufacturer. So with him being the ultimate manufacturer, creating us for a specific purpose, when he allows us to, like Jonah, get on the wrong boat and go the wrong direction, opposite of what he just told him to do, he's going to give you grace because he wants to bless you. He wants you to do what he asked you to do. He wants to fulfill the purpose within you, because fulfilling the purpose within you gives you everything that you're asking and seeking in life, and then some. So we have to, hey Sandra, we have to know that his discipline is there for a reason. Our parents' discipline was for a reason. They didn't do it just to be mean because they had control and they were older and bigger than us, right? Our parents disciplined us because they loved us and because they wanted the best for us. And so it's the same. But not everybody in the world is that way. So don't get that confused. Make sure you pray and meditate about that. My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline and do not resent his rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those he loves as a father. As a father, the son he delights in. Proverbs 3:11 and 12. And then Romans 8:36 and 37. As it is written, for your sake we face death all day long. We are considered sheep to the slaughter. No, in all things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. So I put this one in here because sometimes we have to humble ourselves, because we're talking about humility. Sometimes we have to humble ourselves to go through a process, right? That may not necessarily even be something we are enjoying at all. It may totally be pure hell, but there's a purpose in it. And he's telling us here that we can conquer it, right? So, when I was enrolled in a certain school, I didn't understand this. I didn't apply that principle to what I was dealing with, right? And I didn't stick it out. When I had a job back in my 20s, great job, won't say with who, great company, probably would be, high up in the company had I stayed. But what I was dealing with at the time, it was overwhelming. I was consumed by how I felt, right? Like many of us do. So when you are consumed by how you feel, you don't make good decisions. I already said that. So here, now knowing that I am more than a conqueror through him, through Christ, I stand and I go through it. Why? Because the word says, though we go through the valley of the shadow of death, we're going to go through. We're going to go through some things like now, though we're going through this pandemic. Once we get through this pandemic, then we'll be better creators. We'll have tighter relationships. We'll have more peace. We'll have more rest. We'll have more money. We'll have more connections with our friends. So there are so much things more that's coming out of here. We'll be healthier because we're learning to take better care of ourselves. Just all those things. So we have to go through something to get something out of it. Hope. So for everything that was written in the past, written to teach us so that through endurance and the encouragement of the scriptures, we might have hope. This is Romans 15 and 4. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. James 1 and 12. And not only so, but we also rejoice in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not disappoint us, because God has poured out his love into our hearts by the Holy Spirit, whom he has given us. Romans 5 and 33 through 4. So again, when we are making a decision, we have to be optimistic about it. We have to know that once we listen and we meditate, we seek wise counsel, we will definitely, and we humble ourselves to hear, to listen, to receive correction, we will endure, right? We will overcome whatever it is that we're dealing with because, hey Tanja, because God is a God of hope. If he wasn't, he wouldn't tell you so. He's of love, faith, and hope. So he wants us to know that he loves us. And because he loves us, he disciplines us. And because he disciplines us, he tells us also, I'm doing this for a purpose. So there's your hope. So the hope is so that his purpose can be manifest, which is going to set us up for abundance, right? To receive whatever it is that he has for us. So if it's a greater position, if it's graduation for a student, if it's passing the class, just one thing at a time, passing the exam, right? Whatever that is, we have to make a decision to stick with it. Discipline. Blessed is the man whom God corrects. So do not despise the disciple of the Almighty, for he wounds, but he also binds up. He injures, but his hands also heal. Job 5:17 through 18. And anybody know the story of Job? Job went through a whole lot of stuff, but he did not give up. He waited patiently, he meditated, he prayed, and he stuck it out. He is the ultimate example of self-discipline. He went through things that he didn't necessarily make a decision to go through, but he humbled himself to go through it and got greater later. Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him and who have been called according to his purpose. Again, he is the great ultimate manufacturer, and he created each and every one of us on purpose for a purpose. So if you have not yet found that purpose, know that there is still time. As long as you have breath in your body, he still has purpose for you. And guess what? Once you check off that one thing that he had for you, he got something else for you. When I graduated to be an accountant, I was an accountant. I did accounting for 10 years. Didn't even know, even though teaching was in my spirit as a child, didn't know anything that I was going to go into teaching 10 years later. So I went into teaching. Not only did I go into teaching, I went into the high school. I'm at the high school loving it, thinking I'm good, I'm where I'm at. And then next thing you know, what? I'm at the college. After I'm at the college, here you go. I'm doing all this at the college. Next thing you know, what am I doing? I'm speaking to y'all. I done wrote a book. I'm traveling around and doing what? Encouraging people. God is always going to continuously allow whatever his purpose is to manifest little by little as we're obedient to listen to him and make the right decisions to stand with him. 2 Thessalonians 3:13 says, as for you, sorry, totally tongue-tied, brothers and sisters, never tire from doing what is good. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Galatians 6:9. I was at a point more than once in my life, but where I wanted to give up. Okay. And I have given up, point blank. Had I not and had been more self-disciplined at the time, who knows what, would have manifested, but clearly it wasn't for me. Right. But I want to give up more recently, right? And the thing about wanting to give up more recently, I'm older and a little wiser, so I was a little shy to it because I try to make more sound decisions now, and I try to practice more self-discipline. So it wasn't as easy. So I'm sitting up in church, ready to just like straight walk away because I just can't do this because I'm in my feelings about it. And this word was said, and all I could do was cry, because I knew God had a purpose for what I was going through. So I say this to you again, anytime I'm talking, I'm encouraging myself, I'm sharing what I've gone through, and to encourage you so we can all come up together. But I tell you, when I decided to stand, I am in such a better place now. I am stronger than I was then. I am wiser than I was then. I am able to withstand more now than I was then. So when we go through these different trials, they are to build us up. They are to strengthen us. They are to make us more than conquerors, because we can say we're more than conquerors as we do at church. But it's not until you go through something that you realize you actually can conquer it. And then we don't want to go through it, but we have to go through it. So we have to humble ourselves to go through it, to be disciplined through the process, because whenever you're going through something, you're being disciplined. Something about you is being changed. Just like not being able to go out, we're having to change the way we do everyday things, right? We used to have in the office at the office, not the office at the house, and school at the house, and dinner at the house, and entertainment at the house, and the gym at the house, and we're not used to that. So we have to go and be renewed in that. We have to go through something to get to something better. So Hebrews 10:35-36 says, so do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded. You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what he has promised. And his peace, his joy, his provision are all possible from being able to be diligent enough to go through and self-discipline to go through whatever we're going to go through, because we're going to go through something. So we can't psych our minds up to say we're not going to go through anything, because that's a lie. You should always evolve. Earlier I said, to not want knowledge, the scripture said, is foolish, right? To not want to grow is foolish, because to not want knowledge, you don't want to grow. And that's just silly, because who doesn't want better? We all have goals that we want to achieve that are above where we are. But in order to get to that, we got to cross a bridge, and we have to go through some water, and we got to go over a mountain. And those are those issues of life that we don't want to deal with. And so we have to self-discipline ourselves in order to get there. That's all I'm saying. Keep hope alive. The last essential process is GPS. And I know we think of that as Siri in our cars, telling us, hey, Jenny, telling us to, and Tanja, hey, Tanja, telling us to where to go left, go, 1 more mile and exit and all that. But I called GPS, and I wrote a whole piece on this called God's Positioning System. God has a way of guiding your path and redirecting your path that like you've never known. So my live on my actual business page has decided to click itself off. So I'm reliving myself on that. But anyway, the GPS system will get you a point, and it's just, circle and circle and circle and circle, and you don't know which way to go. That's when we're not praying and seeking God. So to make a decision, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Proverbs 3:6. Proverbs 19:21. Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails. Ephesians 6:18. With all prayer and petition, pray at all times in the Spirit, and with this in view, be on the alert with all perseverance and petition for all the saints. So basically it's saying we got to pray. We got to seek him. In order to know the way that God wants you to go, God's positioning system, i.e. the GPS system, we got to seek him. That goes back to seeking wise counsel. That goes back to reading and wanting more knowledge and acquiring and spending that time meditating. For students in the classroom, this requires reading your textbook. This requires going to class. This requires doing the practice problems. This requires doing your graded homework, right? So there's all these different layers that we have to decide to do in order for us to receive the reward. So on the discipline side, on the self-discipline side, Proverbs 3:17, her ways are pleasant ways, and all her paths are peace. Her ways is referencing wisdom. So, when we take our way, that's when we're disciplined. Like Jonah. Jonah took his way. He was like, you know what? I ain't feeling this. I'm going to go to Nineveh, right? I ain't feeling this. So I'm out. That's his way. Then he had to be rerouted through the belly of the fish to come back so he can go where God told him to go in the first place. Proverbs 3:23, then you will go on your way in safety and your foot will not stumble. When we listen to the way God wants us to go, and the direction and the path and the journey that he have us to be on, we don't stumble. When we don't, we do stumble. Now we don't fall because God is keeping us and sustaining us because he has a purpose for us, and he still wants us that purpose to manifest in our life. So know that, right? James 1:12 says, hey, Tamika, blessed is a man who perseveres under trial. For once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him. And then Proverbs 14:23 says, all hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads to poverty. So you have to go through something. We already know that. Almost everything you read says we're going through something. Everybody that has a story, that shares their story, everybody that motivates, everybody that encourages you, most people that preach, anybody in position, they all have been through something. Now, whether they share it or not, that's a whole different story, right? But we have all been through something. That's how we accomplish. The light bulb, like I told y'all last week, didn't become a light bulb until many years of trial and error. The automobile to what it is today, as when you can barely hear the engine running, from back in when you had to manually jumpstart the engine to when it first had an engine, when they first created one, versus where it didn't even run off an engine. Like, everything has to evolve. And as it evolves, as it tells you in Proverbs 14:3, hard work does bring a profit, but it's hard work. The students don't want to do the hard work. They just want to jump to passing. And then, they're so used to being handheld in K through 12 to some degree where they're given the extra chance to go back and repeat and repeat and repeat. And that's just not life. That's not reality. And unfortunately, on the college campus, especially with 8-week courses, we don't have time to go back and repeat. So they kind of got to learn to get it along the way. So I'm doing these sessions and stuff to kind of get the minds focused so that they can be more disciplined, that when they get to our level, they're not in their feelings and thinking, oh, the teacher doesn't like me, and oh, they just don't, whatever. And they get in their feelings and they block what they're learning, right? Because they're not self-disciplined enough to just follow the instructions and do as been shared. Because that's what leads to poverty. Talking outside of your neck, right? Saying some stuff off the fly because you and your feelings about it. So, we have to learn to let God be our GPS. So what I've been talking about, and I'll go back over it in a review, is the 5 essential processes to achieve your goals. And this is decision versus discipline. So we know decision is when we sit down and we make a conscious decision. We make one with informed, I'm going to say an informed decision or informed choice to do A over B, right? We sit down and you can write it out. You can talk to people. You can meditate on it. Find other information, because now information is at your fingertips, to sort it out. And then the discipline part of it is being willing, humble, to go through it, optimistic, to go through whatever hurdles you have to jump to get it done. Outside of, hey Tina, outside of your feelings, outside of the environment, outside of what it feels like, outside of what you see, we have to be willing to do that. And so in review, the 5 processes are knowledge, guidance, humility, hope, and the GPS, being guided, your route. The actions behind that is study, prayer, being willing, being optimistic, and positioning yourself. So we have to study whatever it is if we want to grow in that area. We have to pray about it. We have to seek wise counsel. We have to be willing. That's the part of humility. Humility takes on its shape when we are allowing ourselves to be in a position that we don't necessarily want to be in, right? We humble ourselves to it, under it, so that we can get out of it what comes out of it. Talking to a lot of doctoral students, the experience was humbling, right? But they saw the greater picture at the end, and so they persevered through it. They pushed themselves. They had self-discipline to get through the humbling experience because they were willing to go through it to get the greater outcome. Whatever it is that we're going through, we have to be willing to go through it. We're going to go through something. Our favorite Psalm, Psalms 23. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, because thou art with me. We're going to go through. We're going to go through. We're going through now. And you have to be willing to go through. You have to be willing to be obedient to do whatever they're asking us to do to protect yourself, right? Because when we come out of this, we want to come out well. We're going to come out closer relationships. We're going to come out having more money, perhaps, hopefully, because we're spending less. We're not going as much. We're cooking at home. So, you're just building. It's a process of building. Hope is being optimistic, no matter what it looks like. I had a friend, and those of you from my church know, hey Chris, knows Denise Stewart, and we call her Niecy, Miss Beautiful. That woman there was the most optimistic person I have met in a long time. Denise had gone through a whole lot of stuff, and I ain't gonna tell all her business, but I will say that she was sick, right? At one point, after she had gone through a couple of personal hurdles, right? She found herself sick. And she told me, because she calls me Peaches, she said, Peaches, I realize I'm not going through this for me. I'm going through this for my family, so that my family can draw closer to God, and so my family can know how to persevere and be optimistic and happy regardless of what they're going through. And every day, every time you saw her, she was happy. She was optimistic. She was at peace. She kept her joy. And that inspired me to really actually know what my friend had actually gone through before she got sick. And then the fact that she was sick and she was still encouraging me with my penny ante problems, and compared to your life situation, your life or death sickness, right? You're concerned about me and my little stuff, and you got all this going on. And that's what optimism does. That's what hope does. So we have to have it, because we're going to go through something, and we have to know that there's a greater purpose behind it. And then the GPS, is, as I call it, the God positioning system, right? It positions us. If we're not in the right position, we don't know which path to take. If we don't know which path to take, we're going to go the wrong direction. If we go the wrong direction, we'll never arrive, or will take us longer to arrive. They talk about it taking the Israelites 40 years to go through the desert. I'm sure it didn't take 40 years to go through the desert, because if you have the right equipment to cut down all the things out your path, right, to get through a desert or whatever, you can get through it. But I'm sure it didn't take 40 years. But I do recall reading God allowed it to take 40 years because he had to allow some things about them, their mindsets, their habits, to die off before he took them into the promised land. Because surely he wasn't ready to take them to the promised land, and it took them 40 years to get there, because it was a whole different generation at that point. So know that we can get off track if we want to, right? We cannot do what it is that we're called to do. We're still going to get there, but it's going to take longer. So you got to be willing to wait then. Because if you're not setting yourself up for success, you're setting yourself up for delay. Not denial, you're setting yourself up for delay. And when you set yourself up for delay, unfortunately, it takes a little longer to get there. Some people mature a whole lot slower than other people. And we know that because we look at our kids and we're like, yeah, it's going to take you a little bit longer, baby. It's okay, though. You're going to get there. And when they get there, you're still just as excited as if they got there right when they should have, or right when everybody else did. But the thing about it is, we all get to where we need to be at the exact time, because God has an appointed time for everything to manifest in our lives. And it's not even about us. That's the whole key. But it's about us aligning ourselves with him so that we can get what he has for us. So, in recapping, I have been doing these, or started doing these talks, because my heart went out to the student not being able to celebrate life accomplishments like graduation like we did, but also giving them a little hope to say, you don't have to celebrate like we did. Create your own memories. This is where the creative part comes in. Because remember, when we were kids, we didn't always have somebody to play with. You had imaginary friends, right? You didn't always have all the toys you wanted. You made toys from the things that you had. So if we're helping them to get back to their creative state, which we are from the ultimate creator, and it's possible, then that's great. Let's do something new for them. So I started doing these things to encourage them and encourage you, us, the life learner, right? Because the life learner, we forget the classroom lessons, and we forget that we are still students, and that we need to humble ourselves as well to seek him, to study more so we can make informed decisions. And when we sit back and wonder and get in our feelings about why we're in the position that we're in, we have to come back and know that it was a step that we missed. But you have to also know God has grace enough to say, it's okay. and let's try this again. So I think this season that we're in right now is for us to say, okay, I get it. Let me fix this and let me get back on track. So you, as well as myself, we're all getting back on track on the things that are for us so that we can actually live our purpose and come out of this thing doing far better than we could ever imagine. So use this time for self-discovery and for growth, for personal growth, so that we can all be better. So I am enjoying these chats that God has given me to talk with you. I'll be back on again next Saturday with more, and I'll post this as a watch party. So thank you guys for spending part of your day with me. I appreciate you. I love you. I speak life into your lives. I speak prosperity into your lives. I speak peace over your lives. I speak healing for your soul. I know that you're going through things. I know your spirit gets heavy. I know it's hard out there, but know that God knows and that He has somebody in place that is there to bless you and provide for you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. And I just want to encourage you to love each other and to love Him. Thank you, Miss Tish. I love you too. So I just ask that each and every one of you continue to pray for me as I pray for you. Bless your families. May God's grace cover each and every one and protect you all from hurt, harm, or danger. So this again has been your girl, Regina Lynette Brown of RLB Consulting Services, encouraging you as I encourage myself. Make it a great day, people.